A single midnight phone call, an ignored employee, and a multi-billion-dollar agreement on the verge of collapse. The majority of individuals pass by cleaning staff without a moment's thought. You notice the uniform, the trolley filled with cleaning equipment, the unobtrusive presence maintaining spotless floors, yet you seldom pause to consider the individual wielding that mop. This evening's tale concerns one such individual, a woman who assumed her shift would be ordinary. However, she accidentally encountered circumstances that would rock the foundation of one of America's largest corporations. She went by Darlene Whitaker, age 58, hailing from Toledo, Ohio. She wasn't showy or boisterous, nor was she someone who needed to broadcast every achievement in her existence. Darlene possessed the quality of carrying herself with quiet grace, even when society appeared to ignore her presence. She brought up 3 children primarily alone, held 2 and occasionally 3 positions simultaneously, and never grumbled about lengthy commutes home via public transportation. She handled her hardships like weighted shopping bags, maintaining a secure hold, no-nonsense attitude, never requesting others to share her burden. That evening found her on Hawthorne Global's headquarters' 23rd floor in Detroit's downtown area, sanitizing waste containers and cleaning surfaces in offices where employees earned more weekly than her monthly income. She had maintained this overnight position for nearly 7 years, consistently arriving punctually and completing her duties before dawn broke. Yet something felt different in the atmosphere. The office maintained an unusual quietness, almost too silent. The expansive glass windows provided her with views of city illumination below, sparkling like dispersed gems across the Detroit River's dark waters. The climate control system activated with a faint, consistent hum. However, this wasn't what captured her focus. Her attention was drawn to the telephone. It rang persistently, not just once or twice, but continuously, piercing the silence. Darlene paused her activities and gazed toward the CEO's workstation. The phone's display illuminated the darkness, revealing a number with an unfamiliar international code. She frowned with confusion. Darlene wasn't someone who interfered in matters outside her responsibility. She had witnessed too many individuals lose employment by intruding where they shouldn't. Furthermore, who would anticipate the custodial worker to handle the CEO's calls? Nevertheless, the persistent sound bothered her. Ring, brief silence, then ringing resumed. The caller on the opposite end showed no signs of surrendering. She checked the time, approaching midnight. Her cart made a squeaking noise as she moved it nearer, her gaze fixed on the telephone. Her hand moved toward the receiver, then retreated. She shook her head negatively. "Girl, don't act foolishly," she murmured to herself. Yet the ringing persisted, almost challenging her to respond. At that precise instant, on that floor, in that towering office building with the city resting below, Darlene Whitaker's existence would take an unexpected direction. When she eventually answered that call, she was no longer simply maintaining an office. She was about to enter a discussion that would determine a billion-dollar agreement's destiny. And she remained unaware of this fact. However, the narrative doesn't truly begin with that phone call. It begins with Darlene herself, her identity, her lifestyle, and why she was the most unlikely person to rescue a corporation like Hawthorne Global. Darlene's existence had never been simple. She was born and raised in Toledo, in a community where you discovered early how to make money last and maximize limited resources. Her father was employed at the Jeep manufacturing plant until his spine failed him. Her mother provided childcare services for others' children as her profession. They weren't spiritually impoverished, but finances always seemed to escape their grasp. When Darlene reached her teenage years, she understood college wasn't a possibility for her. She found employment at restaurants, laundromats, and supermarkets, constantly working to maintain some income. Then children arrived, 3 of them, each presenting their own challenges, aspirations, and requirements. Their father proved unreliable. Some weeks he remained present, other weeks he vanished with explanations that made no sense. Darlene quickly learned not to depend on assistance that wouldn't materialize. She discovered employment cleaning offices because it provided stability, and stability meant survival. It wasn't prestigious, but it was honest work. She could arrive, perform her duties, and return home without anyone monitoring her closely. Most crucially, it enabled her to provide meals for her family. Her children had reached adulthood, 2 daughters in their 30s, 1 son in his 40s. They had established their own families, and while they maintained contact, they didn't visit as frequently as she desired. Occasionally loneliness would surface during lengthy bus journeys back to her modest apartment on Monroe Street, but she consistently reminded herself, being lonely beats being helpless. At her workplace, she maintained a low profile. She wasn't inclined to engage in gossip with fellow cleaning personnel or linger in the break area. She moved with clockwork precision, vacuuming corridors, buffing glass entrances, gathering stacks of abandoned coffee mugs left by executives too occupied to clean up after themselves. Despite keeping to herself, she observed details. She noticed how junior employees held their breath when Alexander Hawthorne, the billionaire CEO, passed by. She observed the different tones executives used when speaking with secretaries versus clients. She noticed meetings extending late into the evening, voices resonating throughout the floor with terms like contracts, projections, and deadlines. She never claimed to understand everything, but she listened attentively. After years of listening, much of it remained with her. That evening, before the phone rang, she was simply performing her usual tasks, emptying waste bins, adjusting chairs, wiping surfaces clean. She paused momentarily in the CEO's office, her reflection looking back from the floor-to-ceiling glass window. Sometimes she questioned whether anyone in this building knew her identity. To them, she was merely the custodial worker, invisible, expendable. She sighed and removed the bag from the container. Her knees ached, her hands roughened from bleach and scrubbing materials. She considered the bills waiting on her kitchen table, rent, utilities, her youngest granddaughter's school fundraiser she wanted to support but couldn't afford this month. Darlene wasn't one to voice complaints, but the pressure existed, weighing on her during quiet moments. Still, she continued moving forward because that's what she always did, advancing one small step at a time. However, sometimes life doesn't inquire if you're prepared before it challenges you. And Darlene's challenge was already waiting through that blinking telephone. Hawthorne Global wasn't just any corporation. For Detroit, it represented wealth, technology, and advancement. The headquarters rose majestically in downtown center, a glass and steel monument that appeared capable of dwarfing smaller structures. For most people, entering felt like stepping into an alternate reality. For Darlene, it was simply her workplace. She didn't concern herself with the polished marble flooring in the entrance or how security personnel wore business attire instead of uniforms. She didn't care about the expensive coffee aroma drifting from the executive lounge. Her concern was completing her shift and catching the final bus home. Nevertheless, she noticed how the building seemed vibrant during daytime and empty at night. During operating hours, the halls filled with conversations, transactions being conducted, heels clicking across floors, the constant sound of printers operating. At night, the noise disappeared and silence became so dense that even minimal sounds felt sharp, a chair creaking, a phone buzzing on a desk, her mop bucket wheels echoing through hallways. The CEO's floor was the most unusual of all. Everything appeared larger, brighter, and more expensive. The desks were sleek and immaculate. The chairs resembled museum pieces, and even the waste containers were polished metal rather than plastic. Darlene occasionally joked internally that the writing instruments in those offices probably cost more than her weekly earnings. She had encountered Alexander Hawthorne several times, tall, early 50s, graying hair, always wearing tailored suits. He wasn't loud, but people paid attention when he spoke. She recalled once entering the hallway just as he passed with two assistants. He didn't acknowledge her, not even a glance. It wasn't exactly rude, it was as if she didn't exist. That described life inside Hawthorne Global most nights, Darlene performing her work, ensuring everything appeared perfect for people who never noticed her presence. Yet she paid attention. She had overheard discussions about clients in Germany, investors in Switzerland, suppliers in South Korea. She learned names of individuals she'd never meet, people whose contract signatures were worth millions. It resembled standing at a storm's edge, close enough to sense its power, distant enough that no one expected you to interact with it. Still, occasionally she wondered, what would it feel like to sit at one of those desks instead of cleaning it? To make decisions instead of sweeping around decision makers. She dismissed the thought. That wasn't her reality. Her reality consisted of steady paychecks, bus rides, and late dinners consumed in solitude. That night, however, she noticed something unusual. Papers scattered across Hawthorne's desk, highlighted sections in a contract she couldn't comprehend. A water glass left half empty, as if someone had been present just hours earlier. She moved cautiously, avoiding disturbing anything, but her eyes lingered on text lines she couldn't quite understand. Her cart squeaked as she rolled it from the office toward the hallway. Before she could reach the next door, the sound struck her again, the telephone ringing. It echoed throughout the room like a demand. She turned back, eyes narrowing at the glowing screen. The number was lengthy, filled with digits and codes meaningless to her. But she understood one thing, this wasn't some telemarketer calling at midnight. Her chest constricted. She set down her cloth and stared. Curiosity has a way of drawing you closer. This time, Darlene wasn't just cleaning. She was standing at the edge of something larger than she could imagine. The telephone didn't cease. Ring, pause, ring repeatedly. Each sound seemed louder than before, filling the CEO's office like an alarm. Darlene stood in the entrance, her cleaning cloth still in hand, heart beating harder than she wanted to acknowledge. She whispered to herself, "Don't do it, Darlene. That's not your concern." She reached for her cart, prepared to wheel it away, but then, ring again. Her feet remained planted. What if it was urgent? What if something was amiss? Nobody else occupied this floor, and the security guard downstairs wouldn't know how to handle such a call. She had always told herself not to interfere, but this felt different. She walked back into the office slowly, as if her body moved before her mind had decided. The phone screen glowed with numbers she didn't recognize stretched across it. She leaned closer. "France," she muttered, squinting at the country code. Her hand hovered over the receiver. She thought about losing her position if anyone discovered she had touched it. But then she considered something else, how desperate the caller must be to keep ringing at this hour. Her fingers curved around the receiver. She lifted it to her ear. "Hello?" There was a sharp intake on the other end, followed by a man's voice, tense, hurried, thick with an accent. Finally, someone responds. "Is this Hawthorne Global? This is Stefan Klein from Munich. I've been calling all evening. Where is Alexander?" Darlene froze. She almost disconnected immediately, but something in the man's tone stopped her, panic, urgency. She cleared her throat. Mr. Hawthorne isn't here. This is the night staff." Stefan groaned. "Listen, we have a serious problem. The contract, they changed the language. This deal cannot stand as written. If it's not corrected tonight, first thing in the morning, I pull out. Do you understand? Billions on the line. I cannot." Darlene's head spun. Billions, contracts. What was she doing answering this call? She had no business here. Yet she didn't hang up. She gripped the receiver tighter. "Sir, I'm not the person you think I am. I don't handle contracts." "I don't care who you are," Stefan snapped, his voice cracked with frustration. "You work there?" "Yes." "Then you tell Hawthorne this deal dies at sunrise unless someone explains why this language changed." Her eyes flicked to the desk, papers scattered across it, highlighted passages. She remembered cleaning around them earlier. Without meaning to, her hand drifted toward the stack. She set the phone down just enough to hold it between her shoulder and ear, then lifted the top sheet. Words blurred together, legal terms, numbers. But one sentence caught her eye, something about exclusivity rights. She didn't know the full meaning, but she remembered hearing one of the executives mention that word last week in the elevator. Something about how clients hated it, how it locked them in too tightly. She swallowed hard. "Mr. Klein, I'm not an expert, but I think I see what you're talking about. This part here about exclusivity. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be changed." There was silence. Then Stefan spoke again, calmer now. "Yes. Yes, exactly. The original agreement didn't have this. Someone added it. If it stays, my board refuses." Darlene shifted her weight from one foot to the other, glancing nervously at the door as if someone might burst in and catch her. "Look, I can't fix this for you, but what I can do is make sure your message gets to the right person. Don't walk away yet. Let me promise you that." Stefan exhaled loudly. "You must. You tell Hawthorne or everything collapses. I don't want to fight. I want partnership, but not like this." Darlene nodded even though he couldn't see her. "I understand. I'll make sure he knows first thing in the morning. Just hold on until then, please." The line went quiet for a long moment. Then Stefan said softly, "All right, I wait, but no later than tomorrow." Click. The call ended. Darlene lowered the receiver slowly, her hand trembling. She stared at the phone like it had just burned her. She had no idea what she'd just gotten herself into, but she knew one thing, whatever that conversation was, it wasn't small. And come morning, someone very powerful was going to find out she'd been the one to answer. Darlene stood frozen in the CEO's office, the phone still warm in her hand. She should have left it there. She should have walked away and gone back to her cart. But the phone rang again. She jumped. It was the same number. Her pulse raced as she snatched it up. "Hello? Whitaker." "Yes. You said your name was Whitaker?" Stefan's voice was clipped, controlled, but sharp around the edges. "Listen to me. You must take this seriously. This contract is a disaster as it is written. Do you understand what happens if I walk away? Hundreds of people in my company depend on this deal. She pressed the receiver closer to her ear. Mr. Klein, I'm just the cleaning staff. I don't know much about contracts, but I heard what you said and I believe you. I'll make sure Mr. Hawthorne gets the message. No, Stefan barked. Message is not enough. You tell me, do they intend to cheat us? Did they change this clause on purpose? Darlene bit her lip. She glanced again at the highlighted lines on Hawthorne's desk. She couldn't know the full picture, but she remembered overhearing two executives arguing in the hallway last week, something about pushing the exclusivity clause through, even if the client resisted. At the time, she thought nothing of it. Now, it made sense. She took a breath. Mr. Klein, I don't think they're trying to cheat you, but maybe someone in the company got a little too greedy. Maybe they thought you wouldn't notice. Silence on the line, then a low growl of frustration. This is what I feared. They treat us like children, like we do not read the fine print. Darlene leaned against the desk. Look, I can't speak for them, but I can tell you this, I've been here long enough to know Mr. Hawthorne doesn't like losing good clients. He'll want to fix this. You've got to give him that chance. Her voice was steady, more steady than she felt. Stefan exhaled hard, the sound like static in her ear. Why should I trust you? You're not a lawyer. You are not an executive. You clean floors. The word stung, even though she'd heard worse in her life. Darlene straightened her back. You're right. I clean floors, but I also pay attention. And right now, I'm the only person picking up this phone. So if you walk away tonight, nobody will even know why until it's too late. If you give me until morning, at least Hawthorne can respond. You owe yourself that much, don't you? The line went quiet again. Darlene's hand trembled as she held the receiver, afraid she'd pushed too far. Then Stefan sighed, his voice softer. You speak with more sense than half the executives I deal with. Fine, I wait, but no longer than sunrise. Tell him the exclusivity clause is unacceptable. We walk if it remains. Darlene let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I'll tell him. I promise. Do not break this promise, Whitaker, Stefan warned. I risk everything on your word. She swallowed. I understand. You'll have your answer. Click. The call ended again. Darlene set the receiver down carefully, her heart pounding in her chest. She stared at the desk, at the stack of papers, at the glowing phone screen that finally went dark. She'd just spoken to one of the most important clients Hawthorne Global had, and she'd convinced him to wait. Her knees felt weak. She sank into the CEO's leather chair, the kind of chair she'd never dared touch before. For a moment, she let herself feel the weight of what just happened. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't an executive. She was the cleaning lady. And yet she'd just saved $1 billion deal, at least for the night. She rubbed her hands over her face. Tomorrow, when Alexander Hawthorne walked in, she'd have to explain, and she wasn't sure if he would thank her or fire her on the spot. Still, deep down, she felt something she hadn't in a long time, pride. But pride was a fragile thing, and morning was coming fast, along with the moment of truth. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds of the 23rd floor, Darlene had finished her rounds. She felt drained, her eyes heavy, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time she tried to push the thought away, the conversation came back, Stefan's voice, the papers, the warning about billions on the line. She stayed longer than usual, pacing near the CEO's office. Normally, she would have been out the door before the first suits walked in, but this morning she couldn't leave. She needed to see this through. At 7 sharp, the elevator doors opened. Alexander Hawthorne walked out, flanked by his assistant carrying a tablet and a folder. He wore his usual sharp suit, his expression unreadable, eyes locked straight ahead. Darlene's throat tightened. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to speak to him. But when he stepped into his office and froze at the sight of the phone off the hook, her body moved before her brain caught up. Mr. Hawthorne, she blurted, her voice shaky. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing at her. Who are you? She swallowed hard. I'm Darlene. I work nights here, cleaning staff. His assistant glanced at her, confused, then back at Hawthorne. The CEO's jaw flexed slightly. Why are you still on this floor? Her palms were sweating. She gripped the rag in her hand, her voice trembling. Sir, last night the phone kept ringing. A client from Germany, Stefan Klein, he sounded desperate, said the contract had a clause about exclusivity that wasn't supposed to be there. He was ready to walk away. I told him to wait until you came in this morning. The assistant frowned, muttering, exclusivity clause? That wasn't approved. He flipped through the folder in his arms, scanning documents quickly. Hawthorne's gaze sharpened on Darlene. You answered my phone? Her stomach sank. Yes, sir. I know I had no right, but if I hadn't, he would have pulled the deal. I couldn't just ignore it. The room went still. For a moment, Darlene thought this was it, that she was about to be fired, escorted out, her badge taken. Then Hawthorne's assistant spoke again, voice low but urgent. She's right. The exclusivity clause wasn't in the draft I reviewed. Someone must have slipped it in last minute. Hawthorne's face darkened. He turned to the window, his reflection staring back at him. Then he spun around and barked, "Get Klein on the line now." The assistant rushed to the phone, dialing. Hawthorne stood tall, but his eyes flicked to Darlene once more. And you, what exactly did you say to him? Her knees felt weak. I told him not to walk away yet. I said you'd want to fix it. I promised him he'd get answers this morning. Hawthorne studied her, silent for several seconds. Then the phone connected and Stefan's voice erupted through the speaker. Hawthorne, at last. Do you know what kind of night I had? Hawthorne raised a hand. Mr. Klein, first let me say this, thank you for your patience. I heard about the issue. You heard? From who? Stefan snapped. Hawthorne glanced at Darlene. From someone I should have been paying attention to a long time ago. Darlene's heart skipped. Hawthorne continued, his tone firm. The clause should never have been there. I'll have it removed immediately. The deal stands exactly as we agreed. Stefan exhaled through the line, calmer now. Good. Then we continue. But next time, Hawthorne, I expect more respect. Understood, Hawthorne replied. And you have my word, it won't happen again. The call ended. Silence filled the office once more. Hawthorne's assistant rushed out, already on the phone with legal, leaving only the CEO and Darlene. He turned to her, his eyes softer now. You saved this company a disaster, Miss Whitaker. A disaster. Do you realize that? Her lips parted, but no words came. Hawthorne took a step closer. Most people here wouldn't have had the guts to do what you did last night. You answered when no one else would. And because of that, we still have our biggest client. Darlene's chest tightened with something she hadn't felt in years, recognition. But recognition was just the beginning, because Hawthorne's next decision would change how everyone in that building saw her. For years, Darlene had walked those halls like a shadow. People saw the mop, the cart, the uniform, but not her. That morning, standing in the center of Alexander Hawthorne's office, she felt the opposite. His eyes were locked on her, and for once she wasn't invisible. He folded his arms, pacing slowly. Do you understand the magnitude of what you did last night? Darlene shifted nervously, gripping the rag in her hand like a shield. I just answered a phone, that's all. Hawthorne shook his head firmly. No, you calmed one of the toughest clients we've ever had. Stefan Klein doesn't wait for anyone. He doesn't forgive mistakes. You managed to hold him steady long enough for me to fix this. Do you know how rare that is? Her voice was quiet but steady. I didn't want him to feel ignored. People don't like that. Hawthorne paused, studying her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're absolutely right. And it's ironic, isn't it? Someone we've ignored in this building just taught me a lesson I should have known long ago. Darlene blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard correctly. His assistant reappeared in the doorway, rattling off details about the legal team removing the clause, but Hawthorne held up a hand. Not now. Close the door. The assistant hesitated, then left them alone. Hawthorne leaned against his desk, his voice softer. Tell me, Miss Whitaker, how long have you been with us? 7 years, she answered quickly. 7 years, he repeated, almost to himself. 7 years, and I've never once asked your name, never once looked beyond the uniform. Darlene stayed silent, unsure if she should respond. He straightened up. That ends today. You reminded me that everyone in this building matters, not just the people with offices and titles. Everyone. Her eyes stung. She wasn't used to words like that being directed at her. I want to offer you something, Hawthorne continued. Not charity, recognition. You've proven you have instincts most of my executives don't. I'd like you to sit down with our staff this week. Share what you noticed. Sometimes the best perspective comes from the people no one bothers to listen to. Darlene's mouth went dry. Me? Sit with executives? He smiled faintly. Yes, you. For a moment, she thought about all the nights she'd spent invisible in these offices, cleaning up crumbs and coffee stains, overhearing conversations that reminded her just how far away she was from that world. And now here she was, being invited in. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Hawthorne replied simply. Her hands trembled. Yes. He extended his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, but there was respect in it, real respect, not the kind people give out of pity. You've taught me something important, Miss Whitaker, Hawthorne said. Titles don't define value. Actions do. And last night, you acted when no one else did. For the first time in a long time, Darlene felt something lift inside her. She wasn't just the cleaning lady anymore. She was Darlene Whitaker, the woman who answered the call that saved Hawthorne Global. But stories like these don't just end with handshakes. They end with lessons that stay with you long after the moment is gone. In the weeks that followed, word spread quietly through Hawthorne Global about what had happened that night. Executives whispered about the deal that nearly collapsed, about the client who almost walked away, and about the cleaning lady who answered the phone when no one else did. Darlene never bragged. She never told her kids or her neighbors. To her, she was just doing what felt right. But the difference was clear. People who had once brushed past her now stopped to greet her by name. Some even asked her opinion, curious about what she'd noticed working those late nights. Hawthorne himself made a point to acknowledge her every time he saw her. And though he didn't shower her with riches or grand titles, the respect he showed was worth more to Darlene than anything else. For once in her life, she wasn't invisible. One Friday evening, as she stood by the big glass windows waiting for her bus, she looked out at the city lights flickering across the river. She thought about that phone call, about how easy it would have been to ignore it, how easy it would have been to tell herself, that's not my job. But she hadn't. And because she acted, everything changed. Sometimes life doesn't give you warning. It doesn't hand you a neat invitation to prove your worth. It comes suddenly in the form of a ringing phone, a moment that seems too small to matter. What you do with that moment, that's what defines you. Darlene Whitaker was proof that no one is truly invisible, no matter how the world treats them. And maybe that's the message here for all of us. Don't underestimate the people you overlook. Don't assume value is written only on business cards or paychecks. Respect is earned in action, not in titles. So next time you walk past someone cleaning a floor, bagging your groceries, or holding a job most people ignore, remember, you never know whose quiet hands might save the day when no one else can. If this story moved you, share it. Remind someone today that they matter, no matter what role they play. And never forget, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we don't even see.